I'm going to show you the 8 crops that I'm raising in my winter garden in Zone 7A in Utah. FYI, it's gotten down to 10 degrees a few times this winter, which is typical for this area. I'm sharing this year's winter garden in part so you can compare this video with next year's video, where I'm planning to grow around 30 crops in the winter garden. If it's 2025 or later, check out that video and you'll probably be even more inspired. But you'll be inspired by this video too, I promise. Let me start with my favorite winter crop, green onions. In Zone 7, these are actually perennial, and they grow, albeit slowly, all winter. You see the green shoots? I can harvest those whenever I want, and I always have enough. This year I didn't even cover it, and I found that it was able to produce enough. In the spring, I'll be cleaning up the bed and moving some of these green onions to other parts of the garden for the summer season to help repel pests. When I tell my friends at work about what I'm harvesting for my winter garden, they can't believe it. I used to think you were supposed to put the garden to bed for the winter and let the soil rest. But I'm learning that's not really a thing. I'm also learning that you don't need to buy an expensive greenhouse to make it work. Some things like these green onions don't even need any protection. Next to the green onion bed is the carrot bed, which is about half empty now. On this southern exposure, the ground never really freezes solid, so I can come out anytime and harvest carrots. I love this because I can harvest what I need and the carrots store just fine out here. I think this year we'll end up harvesting around 50 pounds of carrots. We've gotten through about half the bed so far. As with the green onions, these were fully mature by the time winter came on. But like the green onions, the carrots do continue to grow, just very slowly. Some of them are pretty giant, but I actually like that for when I make hot carrots. If you haven't watched my hot carrots video, go check it out. It will change your life. Forever. We're just getting started with this winter garden. There are so many of us gardeners who seem to think the only thing you can do for your garden in January is salivate over the pictures in a seed catalog. But you should be salivating over the good things to eat from your garden. And I'm not in Southern California or Florida here. This is Zone 7A, which means that some years it gets down to 0 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's minus 18 to 15 Celsius. That means if you don't live in this area of the map, you can grow lots of things in the winter. Most people in most of the country can do as well or better than I do here. I grew up in northern Michigan, so I know how much colder it is. And you'll probably have to do more than what I'm doing here. Let's get back to the tour. By the carrot bed, I have a bed of garlic, which I planted in the fall and will harvest at the end of June. I don't know if you want to call this a winter crop, since I won't harvest it in winter, but it is something I have growing here in the garden. We've had a couple warm weeks here in January, so some of the garlic is peeking out of the ground, but it'll be fine, even with some cold. Next is my giant bed of cilantro. I sowed this cilantro by broadcasting the seed through the bed and raking it in. That was in late August. This allowed the cilantro to mature enough that I could harvest some in September and have been harvesting a couple of times a week since. You'll notice that some of it has turned purple, but it still tastes pretty good. Check out my winter cilantro taste test video to learn more about that. I was able to grow such a giant bed of cilantro because I saved my own seed from cilantro that I grew last year, a whole shoebox full. I'm going to do the same thing next year, but I think I'm going to intersperse it around the garden to fill in gaps and cover the ground with plants that have living roots. Here's one way that winter gardening is actually superior to the regular season. If you grow cilantro in the summer, you have to harvest it within a month or it's going to bolt and go to seed. But if your cilantro matures as the days are getting shorter and cooler, you get about 9 months of harvest. I'd say that's the way to do it. You'll notice with this cilantro and some of the other plants in the winter garden that they don't grow much on the cold, short days. But this can be a good thing too. All the biology just slows down. There are fewer pests. The weeds don't grow much either. I really don't have to water. The garden becomes a way of storing fresh vegetables long term, feeding soil microbes from the roots, and sometimes it's a way to get a head start in spring by planting younger plants that can be established and mature quickly when the warm weather arrives. Right next to the cilantro, now don't make fun of me for this, I have parsley. They look really similar, but I can tell the difference. I'm not going to do that again. The parsley does just fine, and I can harvest it whenever I want. Here are a few different varieties of lettuce. I've got Jericho, which is actually bred for heat, but has done better than any of my other lettuce. The red lettuce is called Lola Rosa. I've got some Buttercrunch here, but I don't think I'm going to grow it in winter again because it tends to get some frost damage more than the other varieties. The last one I have here is called Winter Density. None of these lettuces got as mature as I would have liked them to get before the days got short, so I've had minimal harvests from them, and I'm thinking the main harvest is going to be in early spring. What lettuce I have gotten has been enough to go on a sandwich or a burrito, but I haven't been making salads like I will in spring. I've just got to get this started earlier, like in early August. Next, I've got lacinato or dinosaur kale growing. I haven't harvested any yet, and I think the big harvest is going to be in spring. The mistake I made here is I could have gotten the kale to a large size, and it would have survived just fine. It didn't need to be juvenile and overwintered for the spring. Kale is how I first learned that you could overwinter plants in the garden. It was red Russian kale that had grown to maturity, but I couldn't eat it because it got covered with aphids and I didn't know what to do about it. Well, I didn't clean out my garden bed that fall because I was being lazy. And in the spring, to my surprise, there were new leaves growing out of the plant, and this time there were no aphids. We got a huge harvest just from one plant. We'll see what this kale does when the days get longer. The last crop I have growing is some DeChico broccoli. I've never been able to get big heads of broccoli, and I realize now that I picked the wrong variety to get big heads. I've been surprised to see that some of these plants produce these little heads in December. I've also been surprised to learn that aphids can apparently survive freezing temperatures, as I have found them on these plants. Most of the bug damage you see, though, occurred when the plants were young and was done by grasshoppers. There's a big difference in size between some of the plants, and I have thought it was because some of them got watered more during the warmer season, but it may be that the supplemental light from the windows of my house have caused some of them to grow more. This is a much smaller winter garden than I would like to have next year. I have a lot of different crops that I want to grow, and I basically want to cover the entire garden in growing plants for the health of the soil and to get a bigger winter harvest. Please comment below to let me know what you think I should grow next winter. I'm definitely thinking perhaps a better variety of broccoli, possibly some Savoy cabbage. Oh, and spinach. Lots and lots of spinach. I got about 30 different things I'm thinking of growing. Let me know what you would like to see.